I was sitting and meditating the morning after we knew he was going to be president, and I was doing this, and then my spirit guides, which I definitely have them, this voice just echoed in my head, and they said, Bush is exactly the right man in the right place at the right time. Because he's president, a lot of people are going to wake up. And that they were absolutely right. Mm-hmm. He was a catalyst for awakening. So, and then
a negative catalyst.
A negative, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, because he initiated the Patriot Act, and I was afraid he was going to try to undermine all of our constitutional rights and actually take them away, my PTSD got worse. It got so much worse that I had to seek some kind of therapeutic help to deal with the PTSD. So I opened back up to looking at the experiences, but instead of chasing around trying to find answers, I went through a therapeutic process to try to heal the post-traumatic stress and deal with the emotional fallout of the experiences.
Okay.
Once I began to calm that down a little bit, then I was ready to look more and find out more of what happened.
So at this point, you did go into to see a regressionist?
Yeah, I saw Gloria Hawker, who has her own book. She wrote Morning Glory, Diary of an Alien Abductee. She was also associated with Bud Hopkins. And I met her at the Aztec UFO Symposium in, I think, 2003. And I liked her, and she seemed trustworthy, and so I wanted to have more work done with her.
Okay.
And so kind of picking up where I had the injection and went into shock, when I looked at the situation with her, that's when I found out I had been hauled out of the motel room that night at gunpoint, and that's explained the level of terror I felt in the session with Bud. And then also after the injection happened, suddenly there were 2 security guards on either side of me, and they were pulling me off the table, and we went out a different doorway than the one I had entered that little examining room. And we went down a very, very long staircase, very long, and I assume underground, or further underground. And at the bottom of the staircase there was a little room, and I was tossed in that room, and the door was shut after me. It was like just bare walls, like with a light bulb up in one corner. And I noticed briefly in my shock that I was going through, I noticed there was like a mirror that was like a one-way mirror, a mirror on my side and window on the other. And I thought, they're going to watch me go through this? You know, and so I went through the effects of the injection, and I don't know how to explain it. It didn't seem to hurt. I don't remember pain. But I do remember feeling like I was going to dissolve at the molecular level. And I was afraid of this feeling, and so I laid on the floor and I just curled up in a ball and I screamed, and I don't know how long. I just know a certain amount of time passed and the effect of the injection seemed to subside, and I was laying there exhausted on the floor. And then the 2 security guards came in and took me out, and there were 8 people that had been watching, sitting in chairs. And both security guards sexually assaulted me while these 8 people watched. And I just left my body. You know, I didn't know what else to do. There was nothing I could do. There was a fraction of my attention on the guns in the room, and I thought, if one of these so-and-sos, I'll just say be nice, drops their guard for 1 second and I get a hold of one of these guns, everybody in this room is going to have their brains splattered on the wall. Because I was so angry about what was happening. I was equal measure of rage and terror.
Okay.
But I didn't get that opportunity. So I just, like, checked out. You know, whatever happened, happened. I checked out, you know, and just...
So how did it end? How did you, you know, do you remember, or was that part of the recall at that point? Do you remember going back up the stairs, for example?
I don't remember going back up the stairs. I just remember the rapes happening, and then it seemed like we moved to a different scenario that happened during that similar time. And
okay, when you say a different scenario, did you are you saying that because I know that you mentioned something to me that something happened again at a later date, so this incident that we say you dragged out of your hotel room ended in this way. Somehow we don't know, you know, you getting back on the bus and so on and so forth. You didn't kind of go over that. But how did you get to the next incident? Or when did the next incident happen in your understanding?
It's hard to explain because when you're under hypnosis, you re-experience.
Sure.
And so I was like in this recliner being hypnotically regressed.
So did she bring you out at all to calm you down, or were?
She didn't really bring me out. She just said, "Let's move on to something else." And I have the transcript in my book.
Sure.
And I apologize because this is really hard to even recall, even listening to reading my transcripts, and even listening. You know, there's just something in my mind. A woman under sexual assault, you just don't even want to think about it.
I understand.
Because it's traumatic.
And you were quite young. You were like 24 or something?
25. I was 25 when that happened.
Okay, but can we move to the next incident? So how did, what happened at that point? Did you go back to work, to your knowledge?
Yeah, I did go back to work.
With no memory, assuming no memory, because it didn't surface.
Okay, now I remember what happened was they took me out of that situation and they took me back to my motel room. But before they took me back to my motel room, they actually injected me with something to knock me out.
Okay.
So it wasn't the injection that they locked me in the room to watch, but it was another drug that they used to just knock me out so that when I woke up, I would be in my motel room.
Okay.
And may have been something also to mess with my memory. So there was another injection, and then I just woke up in my motel room, probably tired, wondering why I was tired, and then getting up to go to work again. And there were other things. Probably the most remarkable thing was the memory of being on the moon for a week.
So can you explain how that might have happened?
Yeah. Okay, when I worked at the Tonopah Electronic Warfare Range, I was stationed at Nellis, and then we would be put on a bus and taken up to Tonopah. This is like a regular Greyhound sort of bus. And it's a 4-hour drive up there, and then we would be put up in hotels. The Air Force had contracts with the hotels to put up the Air Force personnel. So we would stay there 1 week, and then we'd be down in Vegas for a week, and then the following, every other week, we would be working up at Tonopah, and then there would be another crew on the other rotation. And so that moon week, I was up at Tonopah, and they took me out of the motel room in the middle of the night and put me on one of the saucers with a couple other guys and took us there to the moon. And the people at the test site, at the Tonopah range, were told that I got sick and was put on a bus and sent back down to Vegas. And the people at Las Vegas all thought that I was doing my work up at the site, so nobody missed me for the whole week.
Okay. So you went, how did do you recall, the flight in the saucer, let's say?
I recall some of it. It was very hard to really get a sense of time. For some reason, 20 or 30 minutes stays in there. But it was a very strange space to be in, to try to assess how much time was passing.
And can you describe the inside of the saucer at all?
Yeah, it was circular. There was a fairly large beam in the center, and around the center there were some chairs that I assumed were for important people. I was with 2 people, men, and we were told to lay down kind of like cargo on the floor. And so we laid down on the floor. We were given a suit to wear that was silvery, and when you put it on, you couldn't put it on, you had to strip naked and put it on. It would vacuum itself like onto your body. So it would you put it on and it would just kind of vacuum pack itself onto you, and there were silver boots and gloves and everything that went with it. And so we put the stuff on, and the craft was landed. It had landing gear, and there was a ladder that we had to climb to go in the underneath part. And then some people came in and sat in the chairs, and I think the pilot, or at least somebody was there, there was like a reptilian on there, and I think the reptilian may have been piloting the craft.
Can you describe him physically?
Yeah. He was really tall, really muscular. He had kind of the yellow eyes with slit pupils, and he was standing behind the beam out of sight, but he moved out from behind the beam and we could see him, and it kind of took my breath away. It was such a frightening thing to look at. And I only saw him for like half a minute, and then he moved back behind the beam.
Okay, was he humanoid? Did he have a tail?
He was humanoid. There was a tail.
Really?
I think there was a tail, yeah.
Okay.
It was just a
Were there any grays? I mean, you haven't really described any grays in any of this experience.
Yeah. Actually, when the rapes were happening, there was a gray, was one of the beings, or one of the people watching was gray.
Okay, was he in one of the 8 chairs? Or
he was in one of the chairs, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was he a short gray or a tall gray?
He was a tall gray.
Okay. Can you describe him at all?
Pretty much the classic gray features. Had a little bit of an aged appearance, I would say, you know, kind of gaunt looking. And
big eyes, small eyes?
Definitely big eyes. And because I'm an experiencer of gray abductions in childhood and through adulthood also, I might be sensitive to their telepathy, because when I was going through those experiences, it seemed like I heard him in my head, and he was kind of thinking, why would these people do this to one of their own people? You know, he was like kind of puzzled, because obviously I was in distress, and he thought, this is a human being, and these are human beings doing this to her. And I think that he was puzzled by that.
Okay. Well, since we kind of go back into the room with the people, the 8 people, were they male or female?
They seemed all male.
Okay.
All male.
Now, to fast forward to this going to the moon.
Yes.
So you go in the craft, you go to what you... Why did you think it was the moon? Did someone tell you it was the moon?
Yeah, they told us it was the moon. There was one blonde security guard that seemed in charge of my debriefings, you know, which meant more sexual assault and injections and whatever.
What does that mean? I mean, you just kind of put that all together. Suddenly, you have a blonde security guard, meaning a tall blonde?
No, nothing like
just
a Nordic. Nothing like a
human?
Nordic. No ET. It was a human.
A human.
Yeah,
a blonde
like
human.
a sociopathic human. Because he didn't seem to have any conscience about what he did to me at all.
A guy.
A guy.
Okay. So was he an officer?
No, I don't think he was an officer. I think he was private contractor. I don't think he was regular military.
Did he wear a uniform?
Yeah, he wore desert camouflage fatigues.
On the saucer?
No, he didn't go on the saucer. He just brought me to the saucer, and he smirked at me and said, I'll see you when you get back, sweetheart. Have fun on the moon. And then just told me to go up the ladder and lay on the floor.
Okay, so the person you laid on the floor with was another person who was being taken to the moon, and that was a guy?
Yeah, there were 2 guys.
2 guys. Did you know them?
One of them, yes, I did appear to know, but I can't really say his name or
But
anything.
I mean, even now, do you remember who they are?
I remember the one, because I recognized him.
Okay.
He was one of the people that worked with me out there.
Okay.
But I can't really go into anything more than that, because he could be walking around without his memory back, and I can't. That has to be his choice. If he has any rattles that he needs to explore, that has to be his choice.
Sure.
So absolutely. I have to leave him out of that.
Okay, so what happened when you went to the moon? Did you see the moon? You know, did you see the external